That'd be awesome.
All right, guys. So the puzzles assignment is basically just three mini assignments. One called random array, which is pretty simple. We're just going to build a random array with 10 values, 10 integers that are between 5 and 25, and then we're going to print the min and max. Cool. And I guess also the sum too. And then the coin flip one, we're just going to flip one coin, and it's going to give us a heads or a tails. And then the second one is to pass in a number, and it's going to flip it that many times, and then return the ratio of how many heads I flipped. Right. And then the names one, we're just going to kind of have some fun with string arrays also, and maybe shuffle them around a little bit. But cool, let's start with the creation of our project. So I made a directory called puzzles. I cd'd into my puzzles. How do I create a new .NET project? .NET new. Cool. And if I open up my puzzles,
Don't you have to do one more thing before you do that, or does it not?
what do I have to do?
.NET Restore?
Do I have to do this or do I not have to do this?
You do have to do
Why do I have to do? Kind of
I
depends.
thought it like updates
What?
everything.
What does a .NET Restore do? Yes, and then it fetches all of the dependencies in your dot. So in your dot.
I just confused there.
So I know you're good.
Oh, okay. So it's
Yeah, in your project.json file, it goes out and fetches all of the necessary dependencies that you've listed, right? Cool. So I've done that. So what's one of my dependencies here?
Uh,
Generic
oh, wait.
right here. .NET Core, right? So I think I'm going to need that, right?
Oh, we have to do this?
No, I'm just kind of showing you what it's going out and fetching. Yeah. Cool. So we have a program.cs with a main function in it. How can I run my program right now with what I have in it? .NET run. And what should I see if I run my program? Hello world. Compiling, no errors, perfect. Hello world. Awesome. And now it's compiled, right? So do you see that the times I run it afterwards, there's no compiling because nothing's changed. It's just faster. It's just running that compiled file, right? Cool. So console.writeLine hello world. And we're good to go. Our project is completely set up. Now we just need to start writing these functions, right? So let's take a look. First one, random array. Create a function called random array that returns an integer array. Fair enough. Sorry, I'm going to move this here, move this. I don't want to split screen. Oops. How do I unsplit screen this?
Unsplit screen. Oh, your
Yeah.
window. If you go to the upper, that green dot, hold it down.
Oh. That's not the best.
Oh, that one.
It's okay. Yeah. Cool. Sorry, I'm just adjusting all of the different screens that I have. Cool. Perfect. So let's create a function within our program class, and it'll be outside of our main function, right? We don't want to have this nested function. So public static. What are we returning?
Value 10 random integer values between 5 and 25.
That's what we're putting into our array, but ultimately we're going to return an integer array, right? This function that returns an integer array. We'll also print the min and max though. You're right. So here's where we put our return type. So an int array, and we're going to call it random array. Cool. So are we all getting used to our VS Code text editors? I know it's a little bit of a jump from Atom or Sublime, right? But one of the really awesome, cool things that comes with VS Code is IntelliSense, and that gives us kind of these errors that pop up. If you see a red squiggly, you can rest assured for sure it will not compile, right? Because that's kind of giving you a forewarning, hey, there's an error here, come check me out, right? What do you think the error will be when I hover over this error right here? It's defined. There's nothing in.
It's not invoked.
It's not if it's defined but not invoked, it'll give me like a green warning sign saying that you have something defined but you're not using it. Like, what's the point of it? Get rid of it. But this is an error because not all code paths return a value. So I have a function here. What did I say this function would return? An array of integers, but it's not currently returning anything at all, right? So if I return, this should give me an error saying that, hey, you're trying to return a string, but I'm supposed to return an int array, right? Cool. So I have a function defined, and I'll eventually return an integer array, so let's not worry about that error for now. How can I go about coding out the rest of this challenge? Place 10 random integer values between 5 and 25 into the array. For loop, let's start. Sorry? We'll need a random object, so we'll use our random object. Someone said a for loop, so let's go ahead and start with a for loop too. I is, int of I. I is less than, how many did we need? 10? 10, you good, 10. I plus plus. Cool. So that'll put, or that this loop will run exactly 10 times, right? And what are we doing here?
Finding the maximum.
Oh, is this where we put in our random numbers?
Yeah, we'll want to put in our random number, right? So the first thing we're going to need to do is have a random array, or an array of integers, right? So how can I do that?
Random with a capital R, or
We'll get to our random object that we'll use to, that'll be kind of like our, we'll use our random object in a bit. But first, before we even get to that, we need an array in which to place random objects, right? We need an array, right? So how can I do that? Int array called maybe my array equals a new int array of 10. Cool. So what does this line do for me, guys?
Does that make a new array with 10 integers?
Yes. Yes?
The placeholders are 0, you said? Okay.
Cool. So this is my data type, right? This is what I'm saying that my array, the type of my array is going to be. It's going to be an array of integers. And this is me instantiating a new instance of that array with 10 places, all having placeholders in them. So now I have my array, right? And now I can start storing values in my array of index I. I want to put in a random number, right? How do I get a random number? This is where we will use our random object. Yeah, so random number, this is nothing right now, but I'm just saying that this is where that random number will go. And then our code will be complete, right? If we return my array. Now we just need to fix this. So how do I get that? Were you saying?
Capital R.
So I have a random, let's give it a name. What should we call our random object? Rand equals new random, like this. What is stored in rand? Or what is rand? It's not quite an int. It's an object that holds a lot of different information in it, but one of the methods that we can pull off of our rand method is something called .next. And what rand actually does is it takes a snapshot of your like your machine's system clock. Yeah, I was gonna think of like time something, but your system clock. And it generates a pseudo random number based on the snapshot that it took. So that's kind of how it generates that random number. But we have this rand object, right? And we can do rand dot next, and it says, what does next do? returns a non-negative random integer, right? So you can just rest assured that the dot next method will return some type of non-negative integer. Dot next, and what's the range that we have? Me too. 5 to 25. So 5.
To 26?
We would do 5 to 26 because the beginning number is inclusive and the second number is exclusive. So this will return any integer between 5, including 5, and 25. Cool?
Whole number, not a decimal, right?
Like, do we need to use floor or anything?
No doubles integers because those are two very different data types in C
Doubles are
Sharp.
gonna have.
Doubles are floating points. Yeah. Yes. Yes. So rand.next will always return an integer. Cool. Awesome. So we have this function called random array, right? Let's call it random array. Cool. And if you're curious to know if our function worked, how many of us have gotten to the debugger portion yet? Maybe I'll do some debugger stuff here. What I can do is put in a breakpoint right here, and my debugger will run my code, and at any point where I have a breakpoint, it'll stop, and then it'll list for me all of the different variables that I have in place at that moment. So let's go run our debugger. It's running, boom, and it stops right there, right? And I have here my array filled in index 0, 24, index 1, 9, index 2, 18. So I can see using my debugger that I have an integer of 10 random numbers. Cool? Yep, including 25. Perfect. And including 5. Yeah. Cool. Any questions about this first algorithm? No?
Okay, can I ask a question?
Yeah, of course.
Why is it that you defined the variable in your public static int array section, but then you didn't call it in the public static void main? I guess I just don't know what these different sections are.
These?
Yeah.
This is just a function.
But what's the public static part?
Right. It's just
And why do you call it in the void section instead of in the static part?
so when I run my program, what's being executed is this main.
Oh, in there.
This is what's being run when I
So
execute.
do you
Yeah.
normally declare your functions and things above that?
Not above it, where as long as you can have them in different files or in different classes, as long as they share the same namespace.
I guess
But
I
we're
just
getting ahead of
wanna
ourselves
know
there. Yeah.
Why you created a new section instead of putting it all together?
In
Is
here?
that what we should be doing?
No, we could
I just don't know
do
what is proper, I guess.
it. Nothing's proper or improper about the way that we have our code set up here. We could just copy and paste this into here,
Yeah.
but it's just that the prompt asks to create a function. That's all.
So,
Yeah.
Okay, I'm also confused. So
Mhm.
you put stuff in program with its function.
In program,
Yeah. In public class program.
so
That's where you put it. Is that because it's a function?
It runs everything.
our program class is just our program itself. That's kind of our program kind of just gets compiled down into just an object that we can run.
Right, but then you said
So
the
we
prompt asks us to make a function, so
Mhm.
that's why you put it here.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to make a connection, I guess. It does
This is just like
public
I
class
never saw a
program.
thing that's telling you what all these functions of like
Yes.
class.
In order for that function to be a part of your program,
In
it does
order
need
for
to
the
be.
function to be a
I know that I have to put.
It has to be in the
my
program class.
using
Yes.
Whatever generic at the very top.
So I'm sure what you guys are used to seeing is something like function, like random array, right?
Yeah.
In JavaScript, right? This is kind of what we have, right? So again, kind of the you could say benefits of a statically typed language is that you need to define all of its kind of attributes or like meta information about the function as you declare it. So if I declared function random array like this in JavaScript, do I know what it's going to return? No. when it hits my return statement down here, it'll return, oh, okay, I'm returning a string, and then it'll return that string, right? In this function, in C#, I have to declare what I'm returning in my function declaration. I also have to declare its visibility, whether it's public, private, or protected. And I also need to let my function know whether it's static, which is something that we'll get into more tomorrow as we talk about OOP. But just know that these kind of bits are required as you declare functions.
So if you were to make another array, would you make a new public static int another array?
Another array. This is a function.
Yeah, I know. So if you were to make another function.
Yes, then I would have to, exactly. Yeah. And if I wanted it to be a part of this program that I'm writing, then again, it would have to be in the program class, right? Cool. So let's go ahead and do that. Since we have the first function done, let's move on to coin flip. Create a function called coin toss that returns a string. Have the function print tossing a coin. Randomize a coin toss. Cool. So let's go ahead and start with this one. Have the function, create a function called coin toss that returns a string, and have it just print tossing a coin. So what should my function look like? Public static string, because I'm returning a string. What's it called? Toss coin. Toss coin. And let's have it write tossing a coin. Cool.
What's the difference between system console write line and console write line?
Oh, nothing. It's just more specific. Cool. Okay, what's next? Yes. Randomize a coin toss with a result signaling either side of the coin. Have the function print either heads or tails. So let's flip a coin.
Oh, so do you make the random number first, like 1 to 2, and then if it's 1, you get...
Absolutely, that's definitely one way to do it, right? Random number. Let's do this.
Did you use a Boolean also?
How would we use a Boolean? Yeah. We could, yeah. Depending on how we write it, we could write a coin toss in a dozen different ways. One of them would be to create a random object and have the int of toss equal to rands range from 0 to 2. Oh, sorry. Rand dot next. Right? What would toss be? 0 or 1. Exactly right, yeah. So toss would be 0 or 1. So we could write an if statement that says if toss equals 1, then let's have a string of results. Oops, string results equal to heads. And let's say if the toss is 1, then change result equal to tails. Otherwise, return results. Cool. Is everyone following this so far? Question, yeah.
But what if you toss it again? Is it resetting heads? Is it going to reset back to heads?
Yeah, each time we call the function, it'll be a brand new function. Yeah. I think the second part of this is to create a function where you can pass in an integer, like 10, and then your function will flip 10 times. Yeah. This is just a single coin toss, right? And I'm going to, let's go through it. Console.writeLine tossing a coin. I'm going to set a random object. I'm going to put in my integer toss a random integer between 0 and 2, or 0 and 1, really. And I'm going to have a string called results that I initialize as heads. If the toss equals 1, I'm going to change it to tails. Otherwise, I'm going to return heads. Make sense? Cool. Let's call this function down here.
So rand.next will produce 0 or 1.
Rand.next will produce a random integer, a non-negative integer. But if I pass it two parameters like this, they will act as ranges. So between
the first
0.
one is inclusive. consistent, but the second one is exclusive.
Exactly right. Yeah.
Which means 0 or 1.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. So console.writeLine toss coin. Cool. And let's run our function. .NET run. I got a heads, tails, tails, heads, tails, heads, so on and so forth.
When you run those as quickly as you will in, say,
A for loop.
Will those return extremely similar values?
Are you running into that problem?
Yeah.
Yes, because the snapshot that you're taking of the random object, again, is based on your system clock. So that changes every, however many milliseconds it takes.
Does the .next
But
method basically do the same thing every time?
The .next method will return a random integer based on the random object. So you need to declare your random object outside of your for loop, and then .next inside your for loop. If you guys don't get that quite yet, we'll do it right now.
Is that Elvish on your arm?
No. It's Greek.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
I thought it was weird. Did you ask for Zelfin?
All right. I actually get that more than, yeah.
What does it say?
It says faith, hope, love.
that's cool.
So create another function called toss multiple coins.
Are we going to do the next
Public.
one as a for loop?
Yeah, we're going to need a for loop, yeah, because we're going to pass in some random integer. Public static that returns a double. Cool. What's a double again?
Float.
A floating, yeah, decimal number, yeah. There you go, cool. So I have a public static returning a double, toss multiple coins. It's going to receive an integer, right? So I can kind of do something like toss multiple coins and pass in, like, I don't know, 8 coins, right? What do I need to do here? Toss the coin 8 times, right? For ints I equals 0, I is less than num, I plus. I have a great for loop so far. What next? Need to toss it. Yeah, cool. So let's see here. I'm going to need a random rand variable here. That's a new, it's a new random object. Cool. And I can do something like this, right? Oops. Never mind. Let's type it out. What's my if check here? If rands, or I can actually just remove this, copy and paste this into my if statement, and that'll work just fine. So let's go ahead and do that here. Rand.next. Let's instead do, since we already did 0 and 2, let's do maybe modulos 2 equals 0. That's almost the same exact thing, right? If whatever this integer produces, mod 2, is an even number, then we will what? Return heads. Maybe keep track of our heads, though. So let's have a variable out here called ints of num heads. Right now, at the start of our program, we don't have any heads. But if this condition meets, then we will say num heads plus plus. Right? Now what? Return. Num heads divided by num. Right?
How do we know when we hit tails?
We don't need to know.
Oh, it just goes.
Because however many times that num heads didn't increment, that's how many tails we have, right? So if we throw in 10 quarters and it turns out that we got 6 heads back, then that means we had 4 tails, right? And the double that we want to return is going to be 6 divided by 10, right? So
Oh, it's on the percentage.
yeah, exactly. So we need to. Oops. Come back. Perfect.
Could you hypothetically just run the coin toss function inside?
Yeah, we could definitely just call our function multiple
But
times.
then you
Yeah.
would have to keep that in the same public static thing.
If you were to see the reason that I avoided that is because what the heck